Greetings. As a company, Zoho has always taken your privacy very seriously. That is why we adopted the business model we have adopted to never compromise on your privacy, never sell your data or expose your data to third parties without your explicit permission. That has always been true throughout our history, and GDPR really strengthens our commitment to your privacy. And with this in mind, we have extended the GDPR data usage rights to our users worldwide. It is a European legislation, but we are committed to extending the GDPR rights under GDPR to our users worldwide. And that is our commitment to you as our user and our customer, to your privacy. So choose privacy, choose Zoho. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the next episode of Zoho Live. I hope you're all doing well and everybody is safe and sound and back to business, some of you, or working from home. Today's topic is about legalities and legal implications of data protection, cybersecurity, and cybercrime. Nowadays, we are dealing with a lot of information. It's been a decade of information influx for all the businesses. We're dealing with a lot of data that we generate or belongs to our clients or peers and even our competitors. And we have access to all the information in the world, but how to use it effectively and efficiently while staying on the safe side of the law. So today we're going to talk about that. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests today, Mr. Hassan Shaksi and Mr. Ayman Merdas, both from Global Advocacy, a leading law firm in the UAE, dealing with some of the most pressing issues in the marketplace, helping businesses staying safe from a legal perspective. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you today.
It's a pleasure, sir. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ait, for having us with you in this session.
Appreciate that. So I'll get to it right away. Again, it's about digital transformation. COVID in the past 1 year almost, it's been around 10 months we're dealing with this pandemic. It changed how we work, and it made more important how we work and how we deal with information. Our workforce are scattered, are distributed, and they're working from home or from remote locations. And a lot of companies are jumping on the digital transformation bandwagon, but there are also a lot of implications. How to manage information, how to deal with our own information as businesses or as employees, and also how to take care of the information of our clients, which is quite an important issue. We just heard our CEO. This is very important for us as a company. It's a part of our philosophy that we take care of data. We take it very seriously, and we treat customers' data very, very importantly, and we take care of it very securely. We comply with GDPR, which a European standard. However, we comply with it globally and make sure that the data is protected. Another aspect is that we as businesses, we put our data on third-party services and companies, tech companies, servers and data centers, trusting them with our information, not knowing that some of these tech companies, they're actually using and selling our data. And although we have no control on how they manage our data, we might be at risk locally with the authorities about the data we share on someone else's server. So I'll start my question, and these are open questions for all the gentlemen here. How important is it for the companies to make sure they manage their own data as well as their clients' data safely and securely? And what are the legal implications there? Gentlemen, please, whoever wants to take it.
Amen.
Today, data is everything. You know, you're hearing about the data war, or data is the business, data is money, and data is controlling a lot of our lives. To keep it secure uh, for yourself and for others is an essential thing, especially for your business, and to protect yourself from other claims from other parties. You have, of course, information relating to your clients. You have data, their data, and therefore you are responsible for that data. Uh, you need to protect that data once it's given to you. At the same time, you need to protect your data, your business, your information from competitors, from other people, in order to sustain your business. Today, information means contracts. Information means new business on the pipeline. Information means that you grow your business. If you lose that, you lose the competitiveness with others because they have your data. So it is quite essential to protect that data. Now, as you mentioned, we don't have the data protection that is in Europe at the moment, but and I think it's in the pipeline or they're working on it, but I cannot comment on that. As you know, laws in the UAE just takes its time. But in alternatively, the legislator here provided us with a very sufficient law to protect and to combat cybercrime, which is law number 5 of 2012, which was amended 2016 and 2018. The the legislator made it quite wide for the judges to protect cyber violations by a wide range of violators, including business or information on this. So it was quite intensive, and the punishment are very harsh. It starts from 6 months up to 15 years of jail sentence, and then you have fines from 50,000 up to 4 million. So I think that gives a little bit of assure. But during our conversation, we will come to the other aspects regarding the protection and how they can protect themselves and what are the procedures that need to be taken.
Mr. Ali, I'll add something. I read a report in regards of the incident or the cyber crime happened. So they compare between the 2016 and 2017, and the incident is double in 2017 than the 16. And the average of the cost of each incident is around $3.9 million. So imagine the whole the cost for a year, it is exceeding $600 billion. So imagine how much is those which they are doing this crime, how much they are benefiting of this crime, and how much the data or it is being not protected, or if it is not being protected, how it will affect the whole economic, I mean the world economic, not only the region. That's what I want to add.
Of course, the effects of this, the implications of this is profound, not only from an economical perspective, but also from safety and security perspective. Again, a violation of people's privacy, sometimes even exceeding to the levels of national security for a country. So if ignorance to the law does not really indicate protection from it. And unfortunately, in the market, probably this is not the hottest topic to discuss. We usually talk about how to increase our sales, how to scale up, how to add to our marketing, and deal with information the way we used to deal with papers and files, and we just dump them somewhere and deal with them later. Now we're dumping data on people's WhatsApps, sharing personal information of our customers on WhatsApp, leaving it on laptops. Laptop gets lost or stolen, or employees leave on, they have information on their personal laptops, and you see it starts, the whole spread of information starts from a small point, and God knows whose information is where and controlled by who. And we don't, as small businesses, probably there are no clear policies and procedures explaining the implications of the law. So I want to ask the next question, and see what are the implications. Mr. Ayman, you mentioned a couple of really serious, examples where we're talking about jail terms and hefty fines. So, how do we go about making sure that our business is protected? If I'm an SME owner, or if an enterprise, CEO here, how do we make sure that our employees practice information management the way they should?
Let me start with this. Criminals always find ways to get around laws, and that's why laws develop with the crimes. And the same thing happens with the IT. But you have to take on yourself to protect yourself as much as possible, and take several layers of procedures that at least assure a certain amount of protection you have. One of them is have a closed system that keeps the information within the company, have securities on that system, have protection, have guidelines to the employees, policies put in that information should not be distributed, information should stay with the company. This is company property, not allowing them to use personal emails, or using WhatsApp, as you mentioned. Using personal laptops should be company laptops, if possible. Having a closed system, having a security system put in by professionals, taking measures not to allow employees to extract information where they are not allowed to, given restrictions for certain information, and access also, and monitoring the distribution of information within the company and abroad. So you have some kind of supervision on these employees to protect yourself, to know if there's any information. I told you about the situation where we had an employee who was working in the company, who downloaded some information from the system and gave this information to a competitor. This company that we represented had a cybersecurity company that is monitoring all employees, and they managed to track the access point, and therefore follow up with the employee, and then we managed to take legal action against them. So these kinds of measures depends on the size of the company and the investment that you want to input in this company, and the information that you have. But at least have some kind of protection, depending on the business and the financial investment that you want to invest, to have. And there are in the markets a lot of systems that you can use that are not that expensive, but gives you at least a minimum protection for your information. And I highly suggest, because today we see a very increase in cyber crimes, as Hassan has mentioned, and we see a lot of cases that are relating to such crimes. So I think having at least a minimum threshold of protection is a must these days.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I mean, here in UAE, the authorities are doing a great job in terms of protecting the internet infrastructure. I know that I was looking at a global map of security attacks, and UAE is in the top destinations of
Sure.
other areas attacking UAE businesses and organizations. But the measures that have been put in place are really protecting us. But at the end of the day, it comes to each one of us as residents, as citizens, and employees of the companies to first be aware of what are we dealing with. If I'm dealing with someone's personal information, a copy of their ID, a copy of their passport, I cannot send it via private messaging platforms, especially if it's not corporate. And if I need to send it or share it or destroy it, what are the policies and procedures, as you mentioned? As employer, we need to really clearly communicate this, put this in the training material, not just to collect signatures. I read it and I agree to it, because it's not about going to court. It's about preventing problems. It's not about catching someone. It's about not really having that problem in the first place. I've seen in my tenure in other organizations that people make mistakes, honest mistakes. You print someone's personal information. I used to work for a bank, and you forget about it and you leave it on the printer. And the next day, someone else who is not authorized comes and picks it up from the printer. They might not abuse it. They might just throw it out, but it has to be shredded and et cetera, et cetera. So policy is broken there. So I think all of these need to be mentioned within the policies of a company as well. How does a legal firm like yours can help organizations in formulating these things? Because going back to law number 5 of 2012 on combating cybercrime, and in brackets, by the way, we put the link to that law. You can download the PDF in the comment section, and also the website of it's ejustice.gov.ae. This is specific for the government of UAE. Of course, if you're tuning in from somewhere else, there are comparable sources for other countries as well. You can get more information there. But coming back to the point, I believe this law is very broad, as you rightfully mentioned when we last time met. How does a company, a legal firm like you, help businesses understand and interpret and apply the law into their processes and procedures in a way that it protects them?
Hassan, you want to take this?
Didn't hear the question because someone had called me and the voice is going down. Ayman,
Yes.
you can hear me or not?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't hear the question, Ayman.
I believe
So you can go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, because I don't know
I
how to go back to.
We provide our services by providing the
Yeah,
laws
please go
that
ahead.
you need to apply and the procedures that you can take and not take. Give you the guidelines that you might need for certain kinds of businesses, how to conduct these businesses, what to do with the information that you have, how to deal with these informations, and how to protect yourself and protect others, and how to protect these information, and what are the guidelines and what are the laws that are applicable that will affect your business, and how to apply for these. So we will work with you to provide you with the guidance required in order for you to protect yourself and protect others from any legal aspects regarding your business.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I hope very soon we can expect the personal data protection law being announced and implemented in the UAE. There is one in Saudi Arabia and in Bahrain, and a couple of other countries, at least in our region. And they're quite impressive and detailed. It helps us.
Mr. Ali, I think we used to do something with the companies or with which we deal with. So whenever there is a requirement or any new laws have come or anything new come to to the field. So we used to have seminars with the companies, with either with the employees or with the general counsel in those companies, and advise them if there is anything need to be clarified to them. So and we used to do that, and we are ready to do it with whoever wants our advice or our help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think, again, businesses need to reach out to legal firms. When I look at the law, myself, I can't really make much sense out of it. It's very broad. I'm not a professional. I don't know how to interpret it. And I imagine myself, if I owned the business, I would have put myself in the risk of probably even breaking the law at some point. There's another thing that we see more and more, especially in the region or internationally, is when we want to work with other countries. Where is the country of origin for us? Imagine Zoho as an example. It's an international company. We have data centers across the world. Each data center kind of complies with the rules and regulations of that country. And people want to host their data there or not. What are the implications from their local laws and regulations? That's why we have in our plans expansion of our data center networks into the region specifically, because each country is coming up with their own regulations. So transfer of information across the border is also an issue that we need to be aware of. With GDPR, one of the things I saw with other businesses was that they said, we're not a European company, but that doesn't exempt you from the law. You most probably store the information of European individuals or entities, which means you are subject to that law. Correct me if I'm wrong. This also is an important thing to discuss, I believe.
Here in the UAE has there is this issue that there is a contradiction between some laws sometimes, and we face this with certain cases. The UAE looks at it from its own perspective. They look at it from their interest at this stage. Let's say, for instance, a jurisdiction. If there is a case that is a hacking that, or some kind of cybercrime that is committed in another country, like we had a case that they took over a website in another country, and that reflected here in the UAE, and UAE said, well, because it can be accessed from the UAE, and UAE has access, then we have a jurisdiction on this matter as well, and it affects the business here. So, it's becoming a small world now, and there's a lot of interaction between the countries. New things are raised in these matters. So this is something that needs to be developed on a time-and-time basis. As Hassan said, we are following these issues. From our perspective, some cases that happened clarified some issues, especially with the regulatories here in the UAE, that multi-jurisdiction cases that happen, and how the authorities here in the UAE review these. And as you said, there was a server issue a couple of years ago with the UAE, especially relating to terrorist or political issues with the web's WhatsApp or other issues like that. So these kind of things evolve, like the technology has evolved. Also the laws and the understanding have evolved. We need to follow up these technologies and the cases on a regular basis, just to follow up these things. But for sure, other jurisdictions laws might tangle with the laws that are here in the UAE.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you so much. Another aspect, well, we talked about businesses dealing with their own information and clients' information. Another aspect that is another hot topic, especially in the past, let's say 3 years in the UAE and in GCC, is e-commerce and social selling, social media selling. As far as I know, as a consumer, as a resident, the laws are very strict about what we can do and we cannot do on social media, either as individuals or as businesses. Do you want to slightly touch on that and probably give us a couple of important pointers, what not to do, what to stay away from in terms of advertisement, claims, etc., etc.?
Well, I think a recent issue that was raised, these they call it fashionista, the ones who promote goods on the media. They used to do it without freely and without having any license or there's no restrictions on their business. Recently, the government came and said, no, if you are going to advertise, you have to mention that this is an advertisement on your screen. Otherwise, you'll be in violation. In other businesses, like the DED in Dubai, they ask for licensing if you are going to present product. Even the cybercrime law does address these kind of things. If you are promoting illegal things or promoting something that is not permitted or not allowed, or let's say, for instance, like gambling or something like that, then you are going to be liable according to the cybercrime law. And the punishments there, as I mentioned, are very high. So you need to look at this law very clearly and very thoroughly to understand that there are guidelines that or thresholds that you cannot go beyond without taking licenses or taking approvals or getting the right, handling it in the right way. Otherwise, the punishment, as I said, is very harsh. And it's a minimum 6 months and a minimum of 50,000 and goes to up to 15 years jail sentence and 4 million dirhams as punishment. So it's quite severe, and a lot of the prosecution now, let's say for a defamation case, a normal defamation case, the punishment is very it's not that harsh as the cybercrime. You might get a fine, you might get a 1 month jail sentence. Here you're talking about 10 times that or 15 times that, depending on the action that you did. So it is very important to follow up the guidelines, either by the regulatory for the license or the practice itself, and even from the legal perspective as well. What are the guidelines? What are the laws that you need to follow in order to keep yourself in the safe side and not be liable legally or be penalized by the government?
I think most of us also heard about what happened in Al Kuwait and Al Saudi in the regard of arresting a lot of people whom they used to advertise on the Snapchat and WhatsApp, Instagram, without having a license. And the problem that in Kuwait there is no license for such kind of business, and that's why they use this way or this method to do their business. Unfortunately, they discovered that some of this advertising or some of this business is related to some of the terrorism organization like Hezbollah, like those people, which they used to pump money in this kind of business, and they are benefiting both the fashionists and this organization. And I think there's a lot of cases now in front of the public prosecution in Al Kuwait and Al Saudi Arabia also in this regard. But here, I think as Mr. Ayman said, the regulation is there, so you cannot do such kind of business unless you are permitted to do it.
Correct. Yeah, the recent developments in terms of the licensing of social media advertising, influencers, e-commerce gave us a lot of clarity. 5 years before, we did not have these, and of course, even as a consumer, I fell prey to some of these advertisements. You don't know where the product is coming from, and you don't know who's selling it, where the money is going, and etc. etc. We also have the protection department here under Dubai Economy, which is really helping us with reporting such cases and limiting the issues. I personally use the portal of cybercrime of the police, Dubai Police, once reporting a specific website spreading false news. So we do have a lot of tools available to us, but I believe that
Right.
in the community we need to talk about it more. It's right that today's talk, the audience is wider. We have people tuning in from across the region, but we use the UAE as an example because in UAE we see that a lot of laws and regulations are clearly defined and somewhat stricter than other places,
Yeah.
which is good. You know, at least it gives us some clarity in what not to do and what to do. And
I
but it is
just
a
I remember a story or a case. I think Mr. Ayman, he knows it very well. I've been called with from one of the client, and she told me that her boyfriend is being detained in Dubai police. So I went there, and Mr. Ayman, I thought that this is a small case, and just to see what's going on. When we met the officer there, he said, "Well, you cannot meet this guy." I said, "Why?" This is a normal case, and it's okay. We have a right to meet him. He said, "No," and he called the prosecutor. He said, "The prosecutor don't allow them to meet." And he gave us a brief of that case. He said, "This guy, he's a very dangerous person. He hacked, I think, 2.7 billion account. I don't know on what kind of account, but imagine the number and the figure, how big it is, 2.7 billion. And this is one guy. And the good thing that he was coming from attending a conference in the cybercrime, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. So he was passing here and had been arrested. So imagine one person, he can hack 2.7 billion accounts. So imagine how this kind of crimes or the punishment it should be harsh as it is in our cybercrime law.
That is correct. Yes. Well, I think we're going to see more and more strange cases. Uh, in law, in the traditional sense, we're talking about thousands of years of human law, the way it was developed in the ancient cultures and civilizations, and probably the English common law is the most recent, most developed one we all rely on. But cyber law takes everything to the next level. We don't have information. There is no literature. There's no probably precedent to a lot of cases that are happening. And I remember the days where piracy of digital content was still not considered a crime until it became theft. Of course, if I'm stealing someone's digital product, it is still, you know, considered theft. Then that happens with information. So, well, we're almost reaching the end of today's session, but I want us to come back to the most important point of how businesses need to look into the law, consult the experts, and have a clear understanding of the interpretation of the law in their country of operation, if we are a UAE-based business, and also the countries with which they are working with. Are we working with Europe? Are we working with other GCC countries? And how do we manage our information and their information? And how do we transport this information across the borders and make sure that we're not breaking any laws, especially that the laws that might just show up tomorrow. And the thing is, when we develop a digital system, an information system, spending, let's say, hundreds of thousands or millions implementing a system, it has to be robust enough, built on safe and secure infrastructure, that future laws do not come and force us to change a lot of that system. That's one of our guiding principles with Zoho. The way we approach data, and we do not use it at all for our benefit or sell it or share it anonymously. And we also help our customers stay compliant with those laws, and at least so anyway, so I'm just gonna look into the questions, if there are any questions. I do not see any questions. So, okay, I think we answered everybody's questions. or everybody, we scared everybody off. It's either or. Anyway, gentlemen, do you like to share with us anything else to close today's session? Probably an example or a, you know, a tip, something to leave us with.
I think the best way
I
to handle it is to, uh, as I said before, to provide at least a minimum or base of security to the system that you have, and just follow up the laws and see what are required from the business requirements, and the licensing required and the approval required, and also to follow up the laws with regarding to protecting the information, either your information or others' information, and just read the laws and ask questions if you don't know what to answer. Just ask. It's better to ask a question than later on you fall into the mistake, and which will take you even more time and more financially to resolve it. So if you're protecting yourself and you're working on the guidelines from the beginning, I think that will even ease the business for you and protect you even further.
I think if we are talking about the implications of the cybercrime beyond the financial, as you said, it is a very big amount for saying the cybercrime. But beyond the financial implications, you need to know that about the client relationship. It will be an impact. The business reputation. It will be impact also because of the cybercrime. So we need to be aware about that. The implication of the cybercrime, it's a big and huge, and we should avoid it and following the laws and the regulations here in UAE, and even on the world, of course.
Great. Thank you so much for all the tips. And again, we'll reach back to our audience and see if they're interested. I think one of the platforms we can talk, okay, there's a question coming up, is to continue this conversation. So Dinesh is asking, as the UAE is a platform for doing business and tourism, can you share about enforcing GDPR when dealing with EU citizens? We touched on this a little bit, but let's answer it once again. So I imagine that Dinesh's company is dealing with European entities. What is the implication of GDPR for them?
Here in the UAE,
Yes.
well, this is a standard worldwide, and as I said, we don't have that law in effect at the moment. But I think the cybercrime law on the present figure does reflect a certain part of that, and does protect and give you a sufficient protection, taking the harsh penalties that are in the law. So I think you are protected here as you are in Europe to a certain extent. Let me give you an example. We had a company that who is a multinational company, and they have a cloud where the information is. And this individual came and stole information worth of $30 million of that cloud. Thousands of client intel from there. And we managed to make a complaint to the police, and the cyber department and the police came and investigated that issue, and therefore took action against this individual, and he was arrested when he came to the UAE and then taken. So I think the protection that you are seeking, that does in Europe, I think does apply here, but it is not as it's not as the personal data protection that is in the it's a different version of it, but it has the same effect of it. So you are protected here as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Wonderful. We don't have any other questions. If you have more questions in the comments later, because this is going to be stored on YouTube and Facebook, etc., we'll definitely send it to you, gentlemen, and you can even comment it right there and then, or answer it, and we'll reflect the comment back on different platforms. And I hope we can do this more, have a series of talks where we talk about specific issues as they develop, and try and help businesses deal with legal matters from a information management, cybersecurity, and protection of personal data perspective. Thank you so much for your
Thank you
time.
so much.
Thanks everybody for attending today. See you soon in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.